Welcome back to Grow Your Impact, Income, and Influence, the number one show helping you reach millions. And today we are actually talking about how to reach millions of people. I've got Erik Cabral. Erik is the founder of PodMax On-Air Brands. He helps people build amazing podcasts. I got to tell you, the first time I met this guy, we were at an event called PodMax, and it was all these super engaged, super highly productive podcasters, and he put all of the audience in the room, put together an absolutely amazing event, and I was blown away by it. He reached out to me a couple weeks ago just to catch up, and I said, I have to have you on the show because we have to talk about how to help people get their message out with podcasts. It's a question I get all the time from my email list. It's a question I get quite a bit through social, and I wanted to bring Erik on to share with you. So Erik, how are you doing today, man?
Fantastic, man. So good to see you. And I'm blessed to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, okay, you left a corporate job after 20 years, similar to me. I was in corporate for about 18, and you went your own road and you started your own business. Tell me like how that decision process went and how did we end up with podcasts? Like that's an interesting thing to be like, I'm quitting here and I'm going to do podcasting. Like if I told my mom that, like I told her I was just going to be an entrepreneur and she didn't like that. I can't imagine what that conversation must have been like.
Yeah, the conversation wasn't with my mom. It was with my wife, the CEO of the house. So that wasn't as tough as I thought it would be. She's very supportive, so I'm blessed that she was like, yeah, do your thing. But yeah, corporate America, man, it was the grind. It was lessons learned, but then also a lot of nonsense and wasted time and trying to find a purpose, not realizing that I was looking for purpose. So I did start some companies while I was in corporate America because I had so much free time on my hands. And tried and failed. It was not the internet of things at the time. Like I had to actually go to a local, what do you call that again? The score is, I forget what it's a
Oh,
small business. Remember that? For
oh
any
yeah.
oldies out there who are listening, you to start a business and an LLC, the internet didn't have all that information readily available for you. So I had to seek it out and drive to Newark, New Jersey, some of the shady part of New Jersey, but also where our international airport is. And yeah, I figured it all out and started a company back then, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a ton, but then I was like, yeah, maybe it's easier to just collect this nice six-figure paycheck versus trying to figure out how to grow a business. But what I did find out, Steve, is building communities, and I didn't call it that then. I didn't know about that then, but that I learned through that experience of having this. It was a video game tournament company, and I would host games. I would like very much rent space like in a wedding venue and have a bunch of kids and they would play Xbox video games all connected through wires called LAN. And that needed community. It needed love. It needed fun and excitement. So that, when we met, was a part of it. Like I didn't realize that until recently. Like, oh wow, my experience back then helped me build some of the cool stuff that I built in the future.
I mean, community is huge. I think it is. It's one of the, so many people are like, well, I can design the best product in the world, or I can design the best thing or the best service. But if you don't have a community, it's really hard to sell that product or service. Having a great, warm community, you guys have all heard me mention this before, but 1,000 Raving Fans. If you haven't read that article, go read the article. It's about having a community that knows, likes, and trusts you. They love what you do, and they will bend over backwards to spend money with you. Let's just talk really quick about the LAN party, because we did that stuff in college. We would go to the YMCA, we'd rent it for the whole weekend, and we would all bring like Xboxes or computers. It was computers, and then we went to Xboxes. We just used
Yeah,
to play Halo 1, like
that's it.
Halo 1, Blood Gulch, three
That
on
was it.
three.
That was
Let's
it.
do it.
Dude, we did 16 players, four Xboxes. That was the max you could have. And
Yep.
it started out in my basement, like 30 sweaty dudes, drinking Gatorades and Monster. I don't think it was Monsters, maybe Red Bull. But yeah, it was just like
Yeah.
staying up until the sun, came up and we were just playing these games. It's so addicting. But what I loved about it was the camaraderie, the teams and the just being able to collaborate and work together to accomplish things like capture the flag and there was an aspect of it that I learned a ton from and didn't realize I was being entertained and having a lot of fun, but stuff that was applicable to business and growing what we're doing today, Steve. So we did that, and then it was, relatively successful. I was gaining, I'd have like dozens and dozens of people at our events, and then we'd hand over that big check, the big fake
Yeah.
check over, like, here, you won $500, kid, congratulations, you won
Dude,
an Xbox. It was a lot of
that's a
fun.
lot.
Yeah,
to a
it was
kid.
a lot. Think about it. Yeah, that's why we weren't profitable. We gave the money away. And it was cool. But then what happened shortly after was something called Xbox Live. And the graphics and the connections online got better. And I was enjoying that so much, I realized, why is anyone going to show up to an event when you cannot do this online? And now 32 people can play. And it was getting bigger and bigger, and I just decided to fold it. And it was distracting me from my actual job. I didn't want to get fired. So that's what happened. And then I don't even know, like maybe 10 years later is when I left corporate America for good. So yeah, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, okay, so that's like the precursor to building a community, but what does that have to do with podcasting, and how did you decide to leave your corporate job? Like, first off, I want to know the story behind quitting. Was it like one day you went in and you spilled coffee on yourself on the way to work and you were like, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm out? Or yeah, was it like the mic drop, coffee drop, like FU moment? Or was it like, nah, it's just time for me to leave, and like you exited peacefully? And then how did you get to podcasting? Because then we're going to get into, if you're listening to this and you're like, just get to the good stuff already, we're going to get into what Erik has learned helping people build these podcasts and being in the podcasting world so that you can take it and implement it.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, appreciate that. I climbed the corporate ladder. I didn't own the ladder, as Robert Kiyosaki would say. And when I got there, I was like, man, I'm making really good money, but I'm not happy. I'm not feeling fulfilled. But I wasn't reflecting and thinking this out loud. I wasn't like, but I just felt something was off. And as I got to that point, I was managing teams. I had a team of 25, and it was a lot of hard work, because I stepped into a situation at the number one pharma company at the time, and they had an internal graphic design creative agency, and they were flat like $500,000 a year, and they had 5 people, and they're like, hey, Erik, come on in. You've got a track record of being a part of and helping to grow internal creative agencies for pharma. What can you do here? So fast forward about less than a year later, we grew that business to 2.5 million. So I was like, wow, look what I'm capable. I mean, with a team, I didn't do it all by myself, but we grew this thing, right? And it was impressive. And I didn't know what I was capable of, Steve. So what happened during that time was they said, hey, thanks for all the hard work, but what's your name again? And you know what? We are going to outsource everything that you've built to India and to Ireland. So thanks very much. Before you leave, though, can you lay your entire team that you built, can you just lay them off over the course of 3 months? And at the end, you can shut the light off. I was like, what in tarnation has happened? So during this 3 months, I was driving to work. It was an hour-and-a-half commute each way. I was listening to Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Somehow it found me. The algorithms found me. And I was literally punching the steering wheel out of anger and frustration, but then inspiration to do something with my life. I'm like, I understand now. I see the zeros and the ones. I have to own a business. I need to become a real estate investor or an investor of some sorts. I already invest in stock. What if I did that for full time? And that's when I started doing the Googles. And I decided on real estate instead of stock. And I asked my wife permission, and she was like, yeah, rock and roll, man. I believe in you. That's why I married you. So go do it. And that road led me down to everything, man. Everything. I'll pause here if you have any questions, but yeah, that's what led. Real estate investing was the gateway for me to get into podcasting.
Okay, so that's a twist too. How do you go from real estate to podcast? But we'll get there. Yeah. Anyone who's been listening to this show for a while knows that my start to this, as well as probably thousands of other entrepreneurs, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Guy handed it to me on a plane coming back from Italy when I did a semester abroad. And I listened to it, and then I got fired from my job. I was a bartender in college, and I went and started buying real estate. It didn't make any sense to any of my college professors. They were all like, you can't do that. And then a year later, when I owned like 20 plus properties, they were like, what just happened? One of them came and sat me down and took me to lunch, and he actually started buying property. The rest of them said that what you did is impossible. I don't know. I don't accept it. There's a little lesson there. Don't ever listen when somebody tells you can't do something. As long as somebody else has done it, you can reverse engineer it. My question that stands out to me, you said when you grew that internal team, you didn't know what you were capable of. And I think that's a huge thing. Like, a lot of people get started in this entrepreneur game and they believe that they can do it. But what was the thing that like twisted you when you were in there? Because a lot of employees would never, they wouldn't be able to grow from 500,000 to 2.5 million, right? Like, they would be real comfortable going in, drinking some coffee, taking the easy path. What do you think was the kick that got you moving and proved to yourself that you were able to do it?
Yeah.
Because some people would get like imposter syndrome. Like, you know what I mean? Like they would get stuck. They'd be like, I'm not really doing this. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes, and this is such a good question, Steve. Thank you for this. No one's ever asked me this, which is weird. I've been on like hundreds, maybe 1,000 podcasts, and no one's really asked me this moment. And I'm thinking about it as you're asking the question. And I think I could summarize it in a way where now I'll be able to tell this story again. So you're giving me new story. So thanks. It's I floated, right, for almost 20 years with, I wouldn't call them mentors, but they would have been mentors. They're my managers at the time. And they were always trying to get me to be a manager. They're like, you're so good with people, Erik. You should just like help us. And I'm like, no, I'm good at making logos and websites and designing. I'm going to focus on what I'm good at. What I'm good at. And I never wanted to deal with that. It didn't serve me to a certain point anymore, because I was as good as I was going to get. Like, I don't think I was learning anymore as a graphic design, expert. And there was an opportunity when I had left. I kind of hit rock bottom because I was in a really cool, sexy design agency in Princeton, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I was so focused, Steve, on the wrong things. It was like being social and having cool friends and hanging out. And yeah, the design was cool, but I wasn't focused on their business and having it grow. I was very focused on the wrong things. I was distracted. Our first baby was on the way. And I was just not the best version of myself. And they were like, hey man, this isn't working out. You want to level up or you want to level out? And I opted out. I was like, I'm not happy here anyway. I'm out of here. And I started freelancing and I started feeling really down on myself. And then I got a phone call from an old manager and he's like, dude, you ready to manage yet? Like, are you ready to lead teams? And it was that reinvention. I was freelancing in a really cool place. I found myself in another spot in Philadelphia and I was like, man, I'm having so much fun here. It was kind of a reinvention, going to a new spot. They always say, like, if you want to reinvent yourself, change locations. Although be aware that wherever you go, there you are. So if you're running from yourself, it's not usually typically a long-term solution. But for me, it worked because I didn't know anyone and it was a brand new space and they had no preconceived notions of who I was. And I was like, I'm a creative director and I built businesses. Like, I just changed that in my mind. And they were like, we need you to build this team and we need you to grow it and we need you to build and we need you to manage. And I'm like, I'm in. Finally, I was ready for it. And when I did it, Steven, that's when it was. I was like, oh crap, look what I did. How did I do this? Yeah, I didn't escape it.
That is so awesome. If you guys are listening to this, maybe you've started your business, maybe you're thinking about starting a business. What he just said, show up in force and say, this is what I do. This is who I am. And you will be impressed. If you say that to yourself, I would say for like 2 or 3 weeks, and not just to yourself, but in public, in front of people, you will turn into that person really quickly, because we have this internal piece that if we say we are something, especially in front of other people, we will force ourselves to mold to that. Tony Robbins does this really well at his events. He forces you to share your goals and your dreams with other people, and then share what you're going to do as soon as you leave the event so that you have some accountability. It works usually a little bit because you're in that room for a couple of days, but doing it, showing up to a team, if you stood in front of them and said, this is who I am, this is what I do, you're going to bend over backwards to make that happen. So awesome. I think that is a huge tipping point. And it is like, you weren't lying to people. You had the skills. You knew what you were doing. It's not like you showed up after never having designed anything. You were like, hey, here I am, because that's not going to work. You don't want to take something that you don't do at all. If you just show up tomorrow and say, I'm a real estate investor with no idea what to do, you might have a hard time with that one. But it also might work.
Though. It did work.
Yeah.
And I did that too. Yeah. I mean, there's something very cool that happens when you do that as well. But you have to do it with sincerity, authenticity, and transparency that, hey, I'm a real estate investor because I'm investing my time here, but I haven't done a deal yet. I've done a deal yet. But yeah, I'm looking for people that have done deals. How can I help you? So that's how it worked for me, stepping into a new space, complete new space. Yeah.
Okay. So how did we go from that to podcasting? How do we get the jump? Still looking for that, because that's a big jump.
It is a crazy leap. So then when I did get into investing, all I did was I had to do a lot of Tony Robbins and Jim Rohns and Les Brown and a lot of work internally, because I had a limiting beliefs. I didn't even know that term. And mindset. I had to do a lot of upgrading to my operating system. And that was daily. Like, first committing to one of my coaches at the time in real estate said, there's all this cool stuff on YouTube. And this is back in 2017. So they didn't even have, it was called YouTube Red, but now it's YouTube Premium. And he was like, I highly suggest, and I say the same thing now too. It's like, you invest in this $15 a month, because now you don't have ads. You can shut off your phone and then it's like it's sleep. And I'd listen to Tony Robbins every single day. You know, I didn't have to buy CDs and listen in my car. And it worked, man. I started like believing in myself and believing in others and surrounding myself with the right people, that people were doing what I wanted to do. And slowly but surely, I became a real estate investor just by hanging around. My favorite quote is Steve Harvey, when he says, you know, you hang around the barbershop enough, you're bound to get a haircut. And that's what happened. I became a real estate investor. I bought a multifamily within 8 months. And now I'm in the front of the room, sharing with people who've been coming to meetings for years, never doing a deal. And I'm showing them how I did it, all the zeros and ones, and breaking it down. And now they were inspired by me. And then all of a sudden I was leading the meetings, you know, in Princeton, New Jersey. I was the one with a friend and partner at the time, leading and organizing and getting people on stage. So that was a wonderful spot to be in, because right there I was positioning myself as a thought leader in that industry. So as I navigated through that, Steve, it was like, how do I do more? How do I create more? How do I offer clarity to people who are like, what do you do again? You're creative, you're a real estate investor. I'm like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast, and that will be the house party for people to just like knock on the door and go, oh, this is the cool stuff going on in here. Now I know. So I did that. I would interview people that I wanted to learn from. And then they would come to me after the episode, especially. They never listen to the podcast, but they listen to their episode. And they're like, man, that was so good. Who's doing that? I'm like, me, my team, I mean. And then I would produce, and it was one client became 2 clients, became 3. And all of a sudden, I'm like dozens of clients, mostly real estate investors. And yeah, it started the whole company, man. It was crazy.
That's awesome. So that makes sense, right? If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my goodness, you use the tool to grow yourself, but then people see you use that tool. And this is the same thing. Like, I've seen people do this with Facebook, right? They're really good at growing a Facebook group, a couple hundred people, a couple thousand people. Then people want to know how to do a Facebook group. I personally don't use Facebook anymore. I know some people do, but whatever your thing is, I did this with events. I wanted to learn how to do public speaking at events. I dived in. My first event, 80 people. My second event, 120 people. My third event, 200 people. And I kept building the events. And then it didn't take very long, and people came to me and said, how are you doing this? Like, They see what you're doing and they tap you on the shoulder. So I have a couple questions about mindset. I am huge on mindset. I think it is if you change your mindset, everything else changes to match. That is how it works. People want the tactic because they think it's our brain telling us a lie. If I just know how to do X, I will then be massively successful. But if you don't have the mindset to back that up, you will revert, right? You'll go back to what you were. So how do you change your mindset? I love that you said, $15 a month, YouTube Premium. I can watch it in my car. I can listen to it. There are plenty of other things. Mind Valley is a great place. $200 a year gets you access to like thousands and thousands of personal development stuff, hours of stuff that you can listen to that will totally change your mindset. If you had to, this is my question for you. If you had a son or daughter that was like 25, dropped out of college, and you knew that they needed something, what would you give them to listen to for 3 months? What would you tell them? Like, what would you give them if there was one thing they could listen to over and over, or a course or a program, something to change their mindset?
It would probably be, I mean, I want to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but if not that, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, The Millionaire Next Door. There's so many things that can change your mindset because we're programmed a certain way, right? The majority, 99% of us in life walk around, drinking the Kool-Aid. And a lot of it's not true, folks. A lot of it's not true. And you have to realize that if you want to play in the game, you got to know what the rules are. And a lot of us don't know the rules. And we're given this concept of the American dream, white picket fence, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, 2.5 kids, all that stuff. It's like, wait a minute. If you revisit this and you tell yourself the story that you will benefit you greatly, like, how do the rich folks do it? What rules are they playing with? Like, people complain about, say Trump, polarizing. I know. Why doesn't he pay taxes? Well, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the folks that came before him wrote the rules, and they play by those rules. So don't yell at the person playing the game by the rules. Learn the rules. So that was a big shift for me, man. That was a huge shift. But that was the catalyst. I was still an angry limiting belief guy, but then I had to understand, like, in order for me to play by the rules, I have to also change who I am, big time.
All right. So I'm just gonna have a few more questions around this mindset
Please.
stuff. So I love that. I like breaking limiting beliefs. You know who Alex Hormozy is? I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff. No. You should check him out. I'll send you his YouTube. He built $100 million business in 3 years. He's now doing over $100 million a year. Super smart guy and great marketing mind. But he said, I was listening to one of his YouTube videos, and he said a quote which I loved, because people were like, what do you spend money on? You don't drive a fancy car, you wear pretty plain clothes, like, you got a nice house, but what do you spend money on? He said, the only thing that I care about spending money on is things that change my beliefs. He was like, I am looking for every negative self-limiting belief that I have, and I want to change it. I want to know the person that can help me change it, and I don't care what it costs. He was one of his YouTube videos, he paid Grant Cardone $150K for 4 hours of his time, basically to do a VIP day with him, because he was like, I believe Grant has something that I need to learn. And he was like, I don't care about the money. The dude makes enough money. He disclosed, he's like, I'm sitting on 60 million in cash. He's like, I don't care about inflation. I just sleep better at night knowing it's there. He's buying some real estate deals, but it's just, so what limiting beliefs, first off, what was one or two that you clung to really tightly in the beginning that you remember, and what finally got you to change them? Because I found that the faster I just give up my beliefs and I let my ego die, because our ego is what keeps us, right? It's, no, I'm right. I am right, damn it. And I'm sticking to this, and Trump sucks, or what, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the belief is. It's like, as soon as you're just like, no, do I really believe that? That's an assumption I made. I'm going to let it go. This is obviously true. And the thing that you said, I'm going to let you talk now. I've been rambling. I'm breaking my own rules. The thing that you said that I loved was you told yourself a different story. And the stories in our head are what make us or break us. So
100%.
what was like a limiting belief that you stuck to, and how did you break it? And how do you tell people to
So,
break beliefs now?
so many, dude. The one that held me back the most at the time, less so now, was failure is not an option. And that was something my dad ingrained in me. And I'm sure he picked that up from his dad. And maybe even like at the time, NASA was huge when he was growing up. So yeah, literally, failure was not an option. Failure in that world meant death. Like, if you don't have the right wire or the right this or that, the shit's gonna blow up, So failure is not an option. I had to reprogram that to failure is success in progress. And that was huge for me, man. If I ever get a tattoo, that's the first tattoo I would get is failure is success in progress. And when I understood that, I was like, oh, I'm allowed to fail. Oh my goodness, I'm allowed to figure things out and not be judged for it or not judge myself for it. So that was huge. The second big piece, which is even somewhat till today, dude, I still work on this every day, is the fear of rejection. So like there's a lot of people out there who want to start a podcast or put themselves on social. They have a business and they are afraid to put themselves out there. Why? Probably the number one reason is their fear of being rejected. And that comes from a deep rooted place, man. That comes from like me being at a high school dance and looking at Tony Pfeiffer. I don't know whatever happened to her. She was my high school crush. She had no idea. I'm saying it for the first time here on this podcast. If anybody knows her, I'd love to talk to her. No, I shouldn't. No, that's evil, right? Because then like I think that's what happens. Bad things happen when people meet their old, or you be disappointed, or it's adultery. Who knows what happens? But I was a wallflower. Why? Because meaning I never wanted to ask the girl to dance, or I never wanted to step to someone that I wanted to step to because I was afraid that I would reject me. And what would that happen? I would feel abandoned. I would feel not worthy. I would feel all these emotions that I don't understand, and I would get depressed. Right? So I'd rather just not try. I'd rather just stay safe. And that's a big thing that I had to overcome. And like I said, is a daily process. And really embracing the idea of like, don't really care what people think. Like, just be yourself. As long as you're not an a-hole and you don't want to hurt people and you genuinely want to help people, you shouldn't care what they think, because the people that will be attracted to you are the people that you can help, and the people that are going to be the type of people you want to be around in the community that you're building. So those were two big things, man. Huge.
Nice. I mean, that's, dude, the letting go of the fear of rejection or trying to please somebody else when you don't even know. And going back to a thousand true fans, like whoever you are, whatever you talk about, you will attract those people. I was on a mastermind call earlier today with a friend of mine named Selena Sue, runs huge mastermind out of Puerto Rico. She has like the people in her audience. I got to meet a bunch of them today, and they came like they mimic different things about her. So she's Asian American, a lot of Asian Americans. She's into energy healing. She's into tarot cards. She's into a little bit of the psychic woo stuff, but she's also deep corporate. And that's the mix of people that were on her. I was just looking at them. I was like, it's so weird, but that's who she attracted. She's a multi-million-dollar business being who she is, which is exactly what you were talking about. I want to get to tactics. We're going to get to tactics on podcasts. But how did you break the negative belief? Because I know there are people out there who would say, I tell myself I'm not going to be scared of rejection. And then like it comes time to press. I used to teach people how to do Facebook Lives. This was 2016. And one lady sent me probably 15 texts on a Sunday afternoon. I hate you. I'm staring at my phone. I can't press the go live button. I hate you. I hate you. This is so hard. And then she finally did it. And she had a huge breakthrough. She had a couple hundred people watch it. She got a client out of it, like all this good stuff. But she was like, I almost didn't press it. I sat and stared at my phone for so long because even though I told myself, I'm going to let myself do this, I'm not going to be scared, I couldn't. But she did. And the thing that I want to know what got you and how you worked on that. She just basically told me, like, I paid you a bunch of money, and if I didn't do it, it wasn't worth me spending the money. But for you personally, like, you had a different like kick in the ass that got you going. What was it that got you to let go of some of your limiting beliefs?
Yeah, I mean, I used some of the tools that your friend there early on that could be helpful for you if you just need a kick in the butt. just like hiring a personal trainer, or getting, forcing yourself to go to the gym. You're like, I just need someone to hold me accountable, and I won't go to the gym unless there's someone there waiting for me, and they're going to yell at me if I don't show up. So that moves my butt so that worked. I would hire coaches. I would hire coaches in real estate or in any type of sort of thing that I wanted to do. But then I started to realize that there's a certain formula to like this creation, like this cycle of creation, I like to call it, where we're talking about beliefs, right? And rewriting your operating system and reprogramming your operating system. So once that happens, and I can grasp onto this as truth, I noticed that it created feelings and emotions. Like, I'm super passionate and I'm freaking gonna do this. So then that emotions lead to me taking action, and then that action, as I started to do whatever it was, invest in real estate or start a multimedia agency, started to produce results. I started to actually tangibly see, oh crap, look, I have a building that I own, or I have, 10 clients now and I'm serving them, and look at the results they're getting. And those are my results. And then those results reaffirmed and confirmed my belief system that I said I'm holding true on. Oh, failure is success in progress. And then it was just all going around again. Okay, then I got passionate again. And like, oh, I got to close another sale. And then I'll go, and then action, results, beliefs. So it just kept going around and around and around. I'm like, this works, man. This is how it all works. It's so simple.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, it's all about getting that spiral started, or I call it the snowball. Like, it just starts off really small, but if you keep pushing it, you keep rolling, like, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and your beliefs support that. And the faster you can get your beliefs to support it. One of the things that I do, I think I got this from Tony Robbins, but like, he had, I don't remember who I got it from. It was some NLP person. I think it was Tony, but it was like, write down what the belief is that you want, and then find 5 supporting things in your life that support that right now, and be grateful for them and focus on that, and do that every couple of days around those beliefs and what you're doing. Because the way our brain works, I love this stuff. The way our brain works is, if we have a new belief, let's say I drive fancy sports cars. I love sports cars. I drive fancy sports cars. Well, our brain looks for proof of that and then tries to protect us. Well, do I really want to drive a fancy sports car? Like, is that what I want to do? Do I want to spend that much money? Blah, blah, blah. But instead, if I say like, well, one, I love the feeling of it. I love driving a convertible. I've had sports cars my whole life. And we start to write down and focus on the beliefs that support the positive version instead of the negative. Our brain always tends to go negative to protect us. That's what our ego does, right? We put up walls. Like, if you think about this, oh, I want to go talk to that beautiful girl. I don't know if I should do that. She might reject me. It reminds me of high school. What happened then? I got rejected. Let's not hurt ourselves. Let's not do that. Oh, but now let's pick a positive belief, right? I went and talked to X beautiful girl, and we had a great conversation. My ex-girlfriend was beautiful, and I remember like going up and talking to her for the first time. Like, find some positive beliefs, and then, believe it or not, your brain will start to act in line with them. I love it. Yeah. All right, podcasting. We're gonna have to do this rapid fire. How many clients have you helped build podcasts?
Holy moly.
Hundreds, thousands?
I would say we're getting close to 100, not hundreds. We'd be closer to 100. But yeah, man, we're blessed because we don't lose clients, once they sign on with us. I think over the course of 4 or 5 years, 1 or 2 had to leave for business reasons, but that's it, man. So our retention is pretty high. In that we are very selective with who we work with. We work with mission-driven entrepreneurs. So you have to have a mission and understand that it's something greater than the downloads. How many downloads am I getting? How much money? What's the ROI on the podcast? When typically that question comes my way, I'm like, there's probably someone else. We're probably not really the right team for you, because we're focused on the mission, and we hope to align with your mission and make it bigger.
Cool. Okay, so 100-ish. In that 100 people, we're gonna give the listeners some tactics, because we've been talking about how you started a podcast. We got through the story. What if they're thinking about starting a podcast? What would you say is the cheat sheet? What is like the 1, 2, 3 top things that they need to do or not do? Let's start with
Yeah.
3 things they need to do and 1 thing they should avoid.
Oh boy. Oh, well, I love this. And if I could share, I don't know if it's premature, but it seems like it's right fit.
Yeah.
I
No,
have I
go
have
for
a
it.
I have a podcast sheet, the do's and don'ts, with
Oh,
tons of this listed. So I'll share with your team so they put it in the show notes, but it's eric.co/guide. It's that simple. My
okay.
name's spelled with a K. So ericcabral.co/guide. And it's all the podcast do's and don'ts. But some of the stuff off the top of my head, um, speak to one and not too many. So typically when I hear shows or even people like turning on Facebook or Instagram, live or whatever they're doing, they go, "Hey everybody," or "Hey Facebook," and they start talking to a lot of people. They're not very clear on who they're speaking to or speaking with. So when you turn on your mic or your camera, understand who your audience is and focus on one individual. Now, sometimes it's helpful to just think of an actual person that you're helping and you act like they're on the other side listening to this. And what you're doing is you're very quickly building trust because now that person's listening and they're thinking, "Oh man, it's talking to me. That person's talking to me." How many times have people reached out to me shortly after I went live or I did something or a podcast and they call me or they say, "Dude, you were literally, I had to pull over. You were telling my story. You were talking to me." And I'm like, that's it. That's exactly what I'm doing. So that's the first. That's the number one thing I always like to recommend, man. Talk to one person. The second is, consistency. Like that seems simple and easy, but it's not. People will create a show and they'll start a podcast and then they pod fade. You've seen them. You and I know a lot of them. You go look and like, oh man, they haven't produced a show in like 2 years. Or, they very quickly fade because they don't have their mission and purpose aligned. And they didn't understand that it takes systems and processes and teams in order to build something that can support you. Like you could do it on your own to a degree, but if you're running a business, it's tough to focus on a podcast and editing it and promoting it and getting, guests or you being a guest. That takes a team of people. That's why, our company's doing well. And that's why we like to help, because those are business owners, our clients, and they don't want to get into the podcasting business. So systems and teams and figuring that out. If you're curious about that, we give the playbook. I'm like, here's how the sausage is made. You want to build your own team? Here, here's what it looks like. But typically, yeah, we love to help people. That's 2, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Third one, I would say if you have a podcast, having, aside from consistency, you as a host have to also guest a lot on podcasts, because then you're beginning to build and leverage and communicate with other communities outside of your own. And what better way to introduce people to your podcast than to be on a podcast? Because now those are people that already love Steve, right? And now I'm on his show, and hopefully you're going to say, "Hey, I want to check out Entrepreneur Circle, man. Yeah, Eric, I want to hear more about what he's doing." So then like you're already talking to your audience. They're already in the space. Like if I'm going to go to the gym and I want to have more people that are in shape or into fitness, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to look in the right places. I'm like, "Hey, I got something I got a protein smoothie place. It's right here. It's right next door. Come over here." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's what I do. Huh? I'm into that too." So just find people that are already in the space that you want to play in. And that's guesting on other podcasts. That's huge. And that's how we met, actually.
Yeah. That is I think all 3 of those are great. Consistency in anything. Staying with the personal mindset piece of this. One of my first coaches told me that. He was like, "Hey, I'm just going to be real honest. You're not consistent. You're not showing up and you're not keeping your commitments." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I always keep my commitments. I act with integrity." Blah, blah. And he was like, "Calm down." He was like, "I'm going to show you 3 places in the last week where you didn't." And he did. And I was like, in that moment, I had the choice. This is like talking about ego, right? I could have gotten angry and I could have said, "That guy's a blah, 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 blah," like gotten really mad, been like, "Nope, I'm doing my own thing." Instead, I was like, he's right. And I'm lying to myself. What do I need to do? And in that moment, I allowed him to coach me. That's what I was paying him for, right? And he said, "Here's what you do. Instead of making these big, huge commitments, make a commitment for a period." So when I started my podcast, I studied a little bit and I heard that most shows, 95% of shows, never make it past episode 10.
Mhm.
Of the 5% that make it past episode 10, 90% of those don't make it past episode 30.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I'm doing 30 episodes this month before I put a show out. And each time I would record a show starting, I was like, okay, there's 5. And I had a count chart. And I was like, we're not releasing a show until I get to 30. So I'll tell you, I wanted to quit at like probably like 15, 18, somewhere in there. I was like, man, I like talking to people, but this is getting like, I'm not seeing anything happening from it. But I was like, I committed to doing 30, which was probably a little bit much. When I first started with this, it was like, make commitments. He was like, make a commitment to try something, like try it for 3 weeks. When I started, I was a big runner when I lived in Phoenix. It was too hot to run. I decided to take up swimming. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try swimming for 10 days. I'm going to swim every day for 10 days for 20 minutes. And if I hate it at the end of 10 days, I'll quit. But I'm going to commit to that. So it allowed that. I love the commitment thing. I also love guesting on other shows because that's really what it's about. It's about networking and about building a small, hyper engaged audience.
Yeah.
Eric, you dropped. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to that. The wonderful thing about guesting on shows is also it's a playground for you to really fine tune your stories. I know you're a big story guy too, Steve. So it's like, if you want a successful business and you want to sell, I mean, a lot of people are like, I don't want to sell. I hate selling. Well, you're not going to survive then as a business. But what better way to sell than to tell stories? People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. So that's huge. If you can tell stories, you got to do it. And then how do you do it? Get on a podcast and tell your stories. That's really, truly how you connect to people and how people get engaged with what you're doing and want to know more. And then that's how you build business.
Very true. Yeah. Eric, you've shared a wealth of knowledge, a little bit about podcasts. People definitely know that you know what you're talking about, though, because of your journey. We shared the guide. If people want to reach out to you, if they're like, I have a podcast, I'm sick of editing, I'm sick of doing the whole thing, I would love somebody to take it over. What do you do? Tell us a little bit about your services.
Yeah, I mean, we love launching podcasts and taking ideas and getting in a strategic level with them to make it a reality and manifest it, with them. That typically takes 6 to 8 weeks. But if you already have a show and you're like, man, this is such a chore, or I think I'm going to burn out and I don't have systems and processes and teams in order to, well, hey, find a team that's doing this. And they're doing it at scale. What better way to invest your hard-earned, cash from your company that to a marketing team, like it's already plug and play versus like, I'm going to go take these tens of thousands of dollars and give it to people that I have to train and people that I have to, hopefully they don't mess up and, and I got to go find somebody else. So yeah, we're tried and true. You plug and play team of proofreaders, editors, audio engineers. My COO likes to jump in and manage the shows as well. So you got like a lot of really cool people. And that typically looks like, exactly, you got a show, just we'll audit it. We'll see how we can improve it. We'll make recommendations and then we'll take it over from there. So on a weekly basis, that's how it works.
Awesome. And if so we're going to put your link, you gave us your calendar link. Calendar link will be down underneath. I believe that's what it is, right?
Yeah. No pressure. I think that my main give is that PDF. I want people to learn and to set themselves up for success by looking at that PDF, podcast do's and don'ts. Yeah. And if you want, I think I was telling you, Steve, earlier that, my most precious commodity is time at this point. So, but I'm happy to share that with your audience. And so there is a calendar link there. If you want to chat, you want to throw some things at the wall or see what we're about, happy to chat.
Awesome. Eric, this has been a wide-ranging podcast covering so many different things. I just want to say thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for sharing some of your journey and some of the things that you struggled with and overcame to get here. I would love to leave with the question of what's next for you, like real estate investing, more podcasting. Like, are you going to be at the front of the room? Like, what do you want to do? What's the rest of this year hold for you?
Yeah,
I know you have goals.
Yeah, thanks for asking, man. I'm about 10 to 12 chapters into my first book. It's all about personal branding and the power of personal branding and how to build one. It's called Be Your Brand. It may change from there, but right now it's Be Your Brand. It's my book. It's coming out this year, hopefully, and we're gonna potentially work with Steve. We got to figure out how to make sure that the community gets what they need after reading the book. Because I know a lot of people who've written books, and they're like, now what? But going with the intention of like, there's a plan, there's a process, and there's a way to access the author's knowledge by joining a community and building that community. So I'm looking forward to that and building that Be Your Brand community. And I'm happy to come back here or have you on as well when that moment comes. So thanks for asking.
Awesome. No worries. You've been a great guest, Erik. To everybody else out there, till next time, take action, change lives, and make money. We'll see you soon.